won the Pacers-Thunder trade?
The Pacers clearly won the trade, and I thought the Thunder did great to give up only what they gave up to get Paul George, who is a free agent at the end of this year. And by the way, the Pacers, forget about OKC, we're unlikely to hold on to him. And unless OKC wins the championship, then what did they actually do? Well, what the Pacers got was a prototypical modern shooting guard, a guy who's I talk about 1 through 5 star players, 5-star being MVP caliber, 4-star being all-star and on down. Oladipo is at least a 4-star player, maybe a 4 to 4.5 star player, and they got him locked up through 2021 in the low 20s. I mean, that's really, if any, that's at or under market for a player of his caliber. And he's only 25 years old. And then you have Sabonis, who makes the second unit work with the rebounding and the passing. Also, a young player who is likely to get better, who can be under team control. The Pacers could not have done better in this trade. They won it.
Well, first of all, you know, it's nobody's going to disagree with you when you're looking at it from that perspective. But we're just talking about individual ability, and you also have to think about what kind of situation you're going from and you're going into. Certainly, when you look at Oladipo, he's younger, and you look at the fact that he's your number one option, and he started at the University of Indiana, and he's synonymous with that town. Certainly, you got to give credit where credit is due to the Pacers for bringing him on board and the job that he's been able to do. But in terms of their individual abilities, one of the things that I religiously said to you over the last several weeks, if not couple of months, is that we have to wait to see until the playoffs arrive, because I saw Paul George deliver the goods in the postseason. Remember, this is a team that went to back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals, and the only reason they weren't in the finals years ago was because they ran in to LeBron James, D. Wade, and Chris Bosh in Miami. And so all those things being considered, that was the one thing that derailed them, but that was when Paul George busted onto the scene and let us know that indeed he had arrived. So what happens yesterday? In the earlier game, a 3:30 Eastern time game, the Cleveland Cavaliers show up on ABC against Victor Oladipo on the Pacers, and he puts on a show. Well, the Pacers game is at 6 o'clock. And what does Paul George do? He drops 36. He looks absolutely sensational. He puts on his own show, reminding everybody of exactly who he is and what he brings to the table. Now, one could look at it and say, well, you know what? Victor Oladipo, look what he's doing. And you can look at the fact that, you know, Paul George was there. He was your number one option. Obviously, he didn't want to be there any longer, and he wanted to move on, which is why they had to move him. The flip side to it is that Victor Oladipo, it took him being the number one option in order to show us what he's capable of. Paul George is clearly not the number one option on OKC. He's had to adjust and acclimate himself to those confines, and look at what he's been able to do. He averaged nearly 22 this year on 40% shooting from three-point range, with a guard that's a shoot first point guard half the time in Russell Westbrook. And I'm not disrespecting him in any way. I'm just saying that's what he is. And still, Paul George finds a way to acclimate himself to a situation, make those necessary adjustments. So if you are a team, it's one thing to look at a talent like Oladipo and say as the number one option, he's all that in a bag of chips. But as a number two option and beyond, what is he going to bring to the table for us? We don't know. Whereas with Paul George, you look at him, and no matter what situation you put him in, he finds an ability and a way to adjust. And so you got to give credit where credit is due. In the end, it comes down to Oladipo's talents being what they are, combined with the fact that he's younger. But let's not strip Paul George of the credit of being that star who can acclimate himself to any situation, adjust upon necessity, and do what he does.